Young sisters Vi and Powder are seen amidst the aftermath of a devastating battle which took place upon the Bridge of Progress connecting Piltover and Zaun. The corpses of their parents lay among the fallen. Vander, who had led the Zaun revolutionaries into battle, takes pity on the two children and carries them to safety. Some years later, Vi leads Powder alongside their adoptive brothers Milo and Clagger on a heist that begins upon the rooftops of Piltover. Powder, the youngest of the group, is afraid to jump a gap between buildings, but Vi assures her that she's ready. Still, she nearly falters. They make their way to the balcony of an affluent Piltover penthouse, later revealed to be Jace's study. Vi forces the door open and they begin filling a bag with whatever valuables they come across. Powder discovers a cache of what she doesn't recognize as hex crystals, but Jace arrives outside the entrance. Milo bars the door with a chair while Vi rushes the group to grab what they can and get out. Powder pockets the crystals, but drops one in her haste. After rolling across the floor, it collides with the wall and shatters, resulting in a massive explosion which causes a portion of the outside wall to crumble and collapse onto the ground below. The children flee the scene, pursued by a squad of Piltover enforcers, though they make their escape by jumping into a garbage chute. On the way home, they're stopped by another group of urchins led by a boy named Deckard. Deckard insists they share some of the loot, but Vi swings the heavy bag of valuables into Deckard's face. She then tosses the bag to Powder while she, Milo, and Clagger engage in a fist fight with Deckard and his thugs. With the three of them distracted, one of the boys attempts to seize the bag from Powder, prompting her to run away on her own with the older boy in pursuit. Milo and Clagger successfully defeat Deckard and the others, but Powder is backed into a dead end alone. She attempts to deploy a homemade grenade, which she calls Mauser, in order to halt her aggressor, but it ends up being a dud. She is ultimately forced to discard the bag of loot into the deep waters below in order to distract the boy while she escapes. Powder regroups with her siblings a short while later, where Milo bemoans the rotten luck of having lost their entire haul and accuses Powder of jinxing every job. They take an elevator down into Zaun and begin walking home. Meanwhile, Vander is tending bar at the last drop, where he lives with the 4 adopted children. He pours a pair of drinks for a patron named Huck, who sits down with a man named Vern and his associate Jules. Vern declares that his business with Huck is concluded and throws Huck a small sack of money. Huck is furious, stating that the sum is far less than what they agreed upon. Vern insists that his price is fair, and Jules makes a show of intimidating Huck by brandishing a short blade. Vander intervenes, asserting that Jules and Vern would not be allowed to leave his bar in one piece unless they honored their word to Huck. Vi, Powder, Milo, and Clagger arrive home moments later. Though Vi insists that Vander not learn of their failed heist, it becomes apparent that he already knows. Vander scolds Vi for her foolishness, reminding her that Piltover is off limits. After their argument gets heated, Vander tells the other kids to leave so that he and Vi can speak in private. He reprimands Vi for not understanding the gravity of her leadership role in the family, saying that she is ultimately responsible for the fates of her younger siblings. Vi wants to stand up for Zaun, but Vander insists that meddling with Piltover will only lead to more problems. He tells her that she'll have to lay low for a while. Vander takes Clagger and goes to have a word with Echo, or Little Man, who tipped Vi off to Jace's penthouse in the first place. Powder discovers that she still has several hex crystals in her pockets. She then overhears a conversation between Vi and Milo, in which Milo belittles Powder once again. However, Powder leaves before she can hear the next part of the conversation, in which Vi defends Powder and criticizes Milo's own performance during the heist. Vander and Clagger arrive at Benzo's pawn shop where Echo works. Benzo tells Echo to step outside so that he can speak with Vander. There, Clagger asks how Echo found Jace's penthouse, and Echo informs him that he followed Jace home after Jace made some purchases at Benzo's shop. 2 enforcers, Marcus and Grayson, suddenly approach from down the street. Clagger leaves in haste and Echo acts natural. The enforcers enter the shop and declare their intention of hunting down whoever caused the explosion. Benzo and Vander play coy, to which Marcus reacts angrily. Grayson tells Marcus to take a walk and cool off, and he does so. Echo climbs up to the building's 2nd floor, where he is able to spy on the ensuing conversation. He is surprised to learn that Grayson and Vander have a pre-established deal. Vander keeps his people off of Piltover's streets, and in return, the enforcers stay out of his business. Grayson beseeches Vander for information, saying that things will only escalate if she doesn't apprehend a suspect tonight. but Vander refuses. She gives him a capsule meant for a pneumatic messaging tube, saying that it will reach her and only her if he changes his mind. Vi finds Powder brooding and berating herself for ruining everything. When Powder rejects Vi's attempts to comfort her, she brings Powder up to the roof and points out several locations around the city where Vi, Milo, and Clagger failed spectacularly in the past. Most notably, she points out her favorite childhood toy, a stuffed bunny, hanging from a power line. She says that they've all had bad days, but the important thing is that they learn and stick together. Powder reveals that she still has the hex crystals, which Vi offers to keep their little secret. She assures Powder that she's stronger than she thinks, and that one day, this city will respect them. Meanwhile, in a reclusive laboratory, Deckard is manhandled by a group of adult thugs. Silco criticizes the boy's performance, saying that he was supposed to follow Vander's children without interfering. Deckard lies and says that he was the one ambushed. Silco implies that he would sooner kill Deckard than allow anyone to tie the boy back to him, but Deckard saves himself by revealing valuable information, that the children were behind the explosion in Piltover. The thugs escort Deckard away, leaving Silco alone with Singed. Silco asks for a demonstration of Singed's latest work, a bright purple liquid, later to be known as Shimmer. Singed places a cat inside the cage of a lab rat, whose drinking water has been replaced with Shimmer. While the cat initially prowls, meaning to kill the smaller creature, the rat frantically drinks Shimmer and displays drastic physical changes as a result. Its eyes turn purple, and it grows dramatically in size, easily killing the cat in one swift blow, and even cracking the glass of the cage in the process. Singed asks if Silco has a subject in mind, to which Silco implies that he means to further test Shimmer on Deckard. Jace and Caitlin arrive at the penthouse only to find it in the process of being robbed. Jace attempts to force the door open, but the explosion triggered by the hex crystal knocks him unconscious. We flash back to a scene from Jace's childhood. He and his mother, Samina, are stranded alone in the wilderness in the wake of a brutal blizzard. Samina succumbs to the cold and collapses in the snow, prompting Jace to cry out desperately for help. A hooded figure approaches and begins weaving a fantastical arcane spell. Soon, the blizzard disappears and flowers bloom as though it had never been snowing. Simon begins to regain her strength. Jace is baffled by the mage's power as the hooded figure leaves him with a now depleted hex crystal inscribed with a magical rune. Returning to the present day, enforcers are searching through the remains of Jace's half-destroyed penthouse. Grayson and Victor question Jace regarding the myriad of dangerous and illegal items found throughout the premises. Victor explains that he is the assistant of Heimerdinger, dean of the academy and head of the council, and that he was sent to ensure that anything dangerous is removed safely, including Jace himself. Jace is incarcerated in a Piltover jail, where Heimerdinger visits his cell and inquires into the nature of his research. Jace reveals that he was attempting to create magic, and Heimerdinger admonishes him, stating that the arcane is dangerous and cannot be controlled through science. He advises that if Jace simply owns his mistakes before the council and speaks nothing of magic, he'll be let off with a slap on the wrist. Vi, Powder, Milo, and Clagger take up residence in what appears to be an abandoned arcade, marking it as an ideal spot to lay low, since enforcers never come down there. However, Marcus and a team of enforcers arrive just outside and begin questioning locals about the children. One man spits on Marcus's shoe, prompting the enforcers to violently throw him through the stained glass wall of the arcade. When Marcus sees the children within, he orders them searched. Milo taunts the enforcers, claiming that their search will be fruitless, but Powder anxiously clutches the pouch of hex crystals at her side, attracting the attention of Marcus. Clagger flips the light switch, darkening the arcade as the children begin their escape. After a brief altercation, they flee out the back door, only to find themselves surrounded in the alley. Luckily, Echo appears, offering a ladder leading up into a dark passageway. The kids kick down the ladder behind them, with Vi and Powder agreeing that they need to hide the crystals. Counselor Melmedarda pores over various handheld puzzle boxes presented by a craftsman, intending to present one to Counselor Hoskell for his birthday. She discusses business as well as Jace's upcoming trial with her assistant, Elora. Mel laments that she needs something revolutionary to put Piltover on the map. Finally, she settles on a specific puzzle box, which the craftsman hesitantly calls a child's toy. Nell simply responds, "Good." Caitlin and her parents, Mr. Tobias Kareman and Mrs. Cassandra Kareman, discuss their responsibility to defend Jace in his time of need, as they are his patrons and have sponsored his work thus far. At the last drop, an impromptu community meeting has begun. A woman named Sevica argues that Zaun should fight back against the enforcers, while Vander encourages peace and solidarity, saying that this will all blow over. Sevica calls him weak and leads her people out of the bar. Vander's kids all agree that fighting is the best course of action and wonder why their father is so reluctant to act. Vi notices a guilty expression on Echo's face and pressures him into revealing what he knows. Vander has a deal with the enforcers. The 7 counselors Medarda, Heimerdinger, Karaman, Hoskell, Shula, Salo, and Bolbach convene within the council chambers in preparation of Jace's trial. As a birthday gift, Mel presents her puzzle box to Hoskell, falsely claiming that it was built only for the sharpest of minds. Hoskell is none the wiser and thanks Mel for the gift. Grayson arrives with Jace in tow and the trial begins. Mrs. Karaman reads the charges against him: illegal experimentation and endangering the citizens of Piltover. Jace admits that his work was dangerous, asking for the council's forgiveness and permission to continue his studies. In the ensuing discussion, the council hammers him with questions and judgments until he can bear no more and admits his true purpose: trying to create magic. The council is dumbfounded, but Jace pleads his case. He believes magic can be created and controlled through science. However, Heimerdinger opines on the horrors that arcane power has bore throughout his lifetime. Bolbach states that the ethos is clear: Jace must be banished from Piltover. Zemina comes forward from the audience. She claims that Jace is not in his right mind and pleads with the council to let her son come home. Heimerdinger moves that Jace be expelled from the academy and remanded to the care of his parents in place of banishment. Councilors Karaman, Medarda, and Hoskell also vote in favor of the sentence, and thus the motion passes with a 4-3 majority. Silco orchestrates a meeting with Marcus. Though Marcus is suspicious of the stranger, Silco implies that he can help him find who he's looking for. Zemina laments to Jace that if she had not spoken, he would have been banished. Jace reminds her that magic saved her life. Still, Zemina urges him to abandon his hopes of creating it. He remarks that if his own family won't help him, he'll find someone who will. Victor helps Heimerdinger consolidate Jace's research with the intent to destroy it, but he expresses fascination with Jace's findings. Heimerdinger leaves Victor to lock up, which only allows him to examine Jace's work in greater detail. Silco offers Deckard a vial of shimmer. Deckard is reluctant, saying it'll kill him. Silco attempts to convince him, giving a speech about how true power only comes to those who will do anything to achieve it. At last, Deckard drinks the vial and undergoes a vast physical transformation, growing in size and strength, eyes and veins an unnatural purple. He shrieks in pain, overwhelmed. Jace visits the Karaman estate, where he encounters Caitlin through the front gate. Caitlin begrudgingly explains that her parents have forbade her friendship with Jace. Her mother beckons her to come back inside, and Jace tries to apologize, but Mrs. Karaman dismisses him. Grayson and Marcus meet with the council to update them on their progress with the investigation of the explosion. Grayson is reluctant to push the people of Zaun too hard, but the counselors pressure her to find the perpetrators no matter the cost, with Bolbach telling her to turn the Undercity upside down if you have to. Marcus brings a pair of enforcers into the last drop, confronting Vander and urging him to give up his children. He commands one officer to search the place. Vander reaches under the counter to get Marcus a drink, discreetly pressing a red button while he's at it. The button triggers a symbol-banging monkey toy in the lower room, alerting the children to the presence of danger. When the enforcer enters the room, they find it dark and seemingly empty. Vi, Powder, Milo, Clagger, and Echo hide in the rafters above while the enforcer searches the room. Though Powder struggles to keep her grip and very nearly loses it, she finally falls from the ceiling just as soon as the officer closes the door and leaves. They report back to Marcus, having found nothing. Enraged, Marcus threatens Vander and everyone in the bar, shattering his drink with a police baton before leaving. Vander goes to check on the kids, and Vi angrily insists that the enforcers won't stop coming and that they need to fight back. Vander brings Vi to the Bridge of Progress, where her parents died. Vi continues to assert that she's willing to fight for change and that she wants a better life for Powder. Vander stresses that he felt the same way once, but that if he hadn't started a war, her parents would still be alive. He admits that he doesn't know what to do, but that he'll figure something out. Jace returns to the wreckage of his study. He gazes from the gaping hole in the wall onto the streets below and contemplates throwing himself from the edge. Victor interrupts, a book of Jace's notes in hand. He says that he's intrigued by what Jace said at the trial and wants to help complete his research. Jace is taken aback by Victor's encouragement, saying that he doesn't even know the man's name. He tells him it's Victor. Vi returns to the last drop and finds Powder working on smoke bombs and nail grenades for the enforcers, confident that her creations will work this time. Vi gives her the stuffed rabbit, apparently having retrieved it from the power line. She tells Powder that what makes her different makes her strong, and then departs. Grayson reprimands Marcus for going into the last drop, berating him as a fool, while Marcus argues that he was getting results. Grayson insists that a violent outbreak is now inevitable. In the midst of their argument, a pneumatic messaging tube delivers the capsule that Grayson gave Vander. Grayson remarks that it may not be too late. Powder takes the stuffed rabbit to the bar, where Vander pours her a drink. He sees the toy and silently comes to the realization that Vi is attempting to give herself up to the enforcers. Led by Grayson, enforcers march down the streets of Zaun. Vi breaks into and sits alone in Benzo's shop, waiting for them to arrive. She hears footsteps outside. The door opens and her eyes widen in surprise. Silco recalls a story of when Vander tried to kill him via drowning, the incident which led to his deformed eye. He reflects on how it changed his perspective and contemplates his gratitude towards Vander for doing it. Vander and Benzo arrive at the pawn shop to find Vi sitting alone and waiting for the enforcers to take her. Vander shoves her into the back room and locks the door, where she begins banging and screaming to be let out. Grayson and Marcus arrive moments later, waiting for Vander's response. In Vi's place, Vander offers himself up to be arrested. Grayson argues that she needs Vander to remain and keep the peace, or else it all falls apart. He retorts that Benzo will handle things, saying that it's the only way. Marcus handcuffs Vander, while Vi continues her protests. Vi hears undue commotion and tries to look out a small window. Marcus shouts for someone to stop, and a sudden splatter of blood obscures Vi's vision. Grayson and several other enforcers lie dead on the ground, killed by a shimmer-crazed Deckard. The monster disappears as quickly as it had arrived, leaving Marcus, Vander, and Benzo confused and on high alert. Finally, Silco reveals himself and Benzo steps forward to attack him, but Deckard emerges once again to kill Benzo with inhuman strength and speed. Marcus is stunned, shouting that this wasn't the deal. Silco dismissively replies that the deal has changed and tosses Marcus a sack of coins. Deckard knocks Vander unconscious with a punch to the face and drags him away, following Silco, leaving both Marcus and Vi to stew in distress alone. Jace and Victor are deep in study and arrive at the calculation that could stabilize the hex crystals. Jace laments that they could test it if only they had access to his equipment, which is currently locked away in Heimerdinger's lab and is set to be destroyed the following day. Victor brandishes Heimerdinger's keys, but Jace fervently disapproves of stealing back his equipment, as he knows it would put both of them at risk of banishment from Piltover. Victor provides encouragement, stating that this Hextech dream of yours has the potential to make the world a better place. Inspired, Jace corrects him, our Hextech dream. Echo arrives to free Vi from the pawn shop, declaring that he saw everything. Both in tears, they embrace, and Vi asks where they took Vander. The effects of Shimmer wear off on Deckard, returning him to a normal yet nauseous state. Vander begins to wake up as a thug drags him across a catwalk overlooking a workshop where Silco's workers are forging metal weapons and mass-producing Shimmer. Silco and Vander vehemently argue the merits of a violent revolution. Silco explains that violence is a crude but necessary tool to liberate Zaun. Regarding Vander as a traitor to the cause, Vander retorts that the sacrifices of war aren't worth the reward. The pair also reflect on Vander's betrayal of Silco, with Vander claiming that he's never forgiven himself for what he did. In the end, Silco's thug takes Vander to be locked away, but before he goes, Vander sees that Sevika is here under Silco's employ. In the black of night, Victor and Jace arrive at Heimerdinger's lab. Victor begins unlocking the door when a flashlight ignites on them, wielded by Mel, who seems impressed at the men's conviction. They scramble to convince Mel of Hextech's potential while a security guard is heard approaching. Mel relents, telling them that they have one night to impress her or to expect exile. She then moves to engage the guard in conversation and steer him away from Heimerdinger's lab. Finally, Victor unlocks the door. At the last drop, Milo and Clagger are ready to fight the enforcers while Powder is on her bed with the stuffed rabbit depressed. Vi then returns and explains to her siblings that Benzo is dead and Vander has been kidnapped, describing the horror of the monster she saw. She resolves to help Vander, revealing that Echo followed Silco to his workshop. As the kids get ready to join her in saving Vander, Vi tells Powder that she can't come along because it's too dangerous. Powder argues, but Vi is adamant, telling her she isn't ready. She gives Powder a flare, instructing her to run if someone comes for her, and wherever she lights it, Vi will find her. Then she departs along with Milo and Claggor. Jace prepares the machine that will activate the Hex Crystal. As it whirs to life, he expresses doubts that it will hold, but Victor assures him that it will stabilize. The crystal emanates a blue glow, bright enough to become visible to the enforcers on the streets below. Powder suffers a mental breakdown, screaming and sobbing in pain and rage, and throwing a symbol-banging monkey toy at the wall and breaking it. She throws a bag to the ground, and several hex crystals roll out. Gradually, she begins to calm down as she realizes that one of them was responsible for the explosion at Jace's apartment and comes up with a plan to help her family. Vi, Milo, and Claggor stealthily scale the side of Silco's workshop and drop inside through a broken ceiling window. Back in Heimerdinger's lab, the crystal stabilizes and begins to levitate a small distance from its casing, which Jace remarks it's never done before. He turns a dial and several metal panels inscribed with runes begin to rotate on the machine. The crystal levitates higher and higher until suddenly, it releases a pulse of force powerful enough to make Jace and Victor put their arms up to shield themselves. The force continues, and Victor shouts for Jace to disengage, whom struggles to reach for the switch under the intensity of the force. Another pulse shatters the laboratory's windows, glass exploding outward, and yet another pulls the glass back in. Shards fly towards the two men, one cutting Jace's cheek as he finally deactivates the machine. Vi, Milo, and Claggor sneak across the catwalk and come to a small room where Vander is locked to a chair via padlocks and metal restraints on all four limbs. Milo begins picking the locks and Vander asks how they managed to get in with so many guards everywhere. Vi explains how easy it was, and they both realize that they've walked into a trap. Silco appears, welcoming them from the other side of the catwalk with a large group of henchmen at his back. Vi instructs Claggor to find another way out as she straps on Vander's metal gauntlet suit. Against Vander's wishes, fight Silco's henchmen. Powder arrives outside the workshop. Peering through a crevice, she sees Vi hold up her fists as the first of Silco's henchmen approaches her and climbs up on an outside wall. The man strikes out with a knife, but Vi blocks and retaliates with an uppercut to the jaw that puts him on his back. The other henchmen begin to swarm towards Vi, but she deftly defeats several of them in succession. Milo cracks the first lock, freeing Vander's leg. Claggor discovers that one of the walls leading outside is structurally weak. Powder stops at a ledge where she's level with the catwalk and can see into the workshop through a hole in the wall. After seeing Vi knock out numerous henchmen, Sevica moves to join the fray, but Silco stops her. He retrieves a vial of shimmer and gives it to Deckard, who drinks it down greedily. Once again, he transforms into a hulking monstrosity. Barely able to control himself, he throws another henchman off the catwalk with impossible ease. Vander urges Milo to hurry. For a moment, Deckard looks dazed. Vi takes the opportunity to go in for a forceful blow with both gauntlets, but Deckard grabs her by the neck with superhuman speed. Vander pleads Silco to spare Vi, but Silco rebuffs. Deckard throws Vi to the ground, knocking off one of the gauntlets. She crawls back to the room with Vander, slides the metal door shut, and locks it in place. Two enforcers, backed by Heimerdinger, attempt to force open the doors to the professor's lab, but Victor has barred them together with his cane. With no time left to spare, Jace closes his eyes and recalls the motions of the mage who saved his mother, dialing the switch accordingly. Several runes lock in place as one final, massive pulse of energy lifts Victor and Jace from the floor. Victor's cane snaps in two as the enforcers force the doors open. Heimerdinger and the officers enter the lab to see a dazzling display of soft blue light filling the space. Jace, Victor, and numerous objects are suspended in midair as if floating in water. Heimerdinger can hardly believe his eyes. They've succeeded in creating magic, but he asserts that this is not what Piltover's future looks like. Mel appears in the doorway and retorts that it is for the council to decide, and that perhaps it's time for the era of magic. Jace corrects her, the era of Hextech. Powder shovels multiple hex crystals into the body of the symbol-banging monkey toy, while Deckard is beginning to make dents in the door. Claggor is slowly dismantling a weak wall with a metal pipe and looses a single brick, giving him a tiny window outside. Powder winds up the monkey toy, reaches through a hole in the wall to set it in place. It walks toward Deckard, steadily clapping a crystal between its symbols. Deckard notices the toy and pauses to examine it, befuddled. Milo cracks the final lock to release Vander, and Cliger pushes away bricks until there's a human-sized hole in the wall. One final time, the monkey claps and the gem explodes. Powder is knocked from her ledge. Sevika rushes to push Silco out of the way and gets caught in the explosion, losing her left arm. A flammable trail of shimmer residue ignites all the way back to Singe's lab, consuming him in flames. One of the crystals ricochets into the ceiling of the room, propelling metal shrapnel into Milo and Cliger's bodies and burying them under debris as the roof collapses on top of them. As Powder is falling, she is in awe of the explosion. Marcus sees the explosion in the distance. Vander is trapped under debris but alive. Deckard gets back on his feet, merely stunned, and Silco orders his remaining henchmen to kill Vi and Vander. Vi is sobbing, crushed beneath the collapsed metal door. Vander summons all of his strength and pushes the debris off of himself, quickly knocking a henchman senseless as he approaches. He retrieves 2 metal hooks and dons them as improvised brass knuckles, dispatching a second henchman easily, and makes his way to Deckard. Vi sobs more upon seeing Milo and Cliger dead and the head of the monkey toy, knowing it was Powder's. While Deckard's strength is immense, Vander holds his own until Silco stabs him with a dagger from behind. Vander whips around and takes Silco by the neck, but Silco stabs him again and his strength fails him. He goes limp, and Silco gently pushes him off the catwalk. Vander crashes on top of a crate full of shimmer vials, barely able to move, though he weakly reaches for a vial of shimmer right after Silco orders Deckard to find Vi. Deckard easily lifts the metal door off of Vi and tosses it aside. However, Vander reappears, now transformed by shimmer and much larger than Deckard. He grabs Deckard and pins him to the wall by the throat, squeezing until his body goes limp and discarding him to the side. He then screams out Silco's name, but the flames engulfing the building are reaching dangerously close to Vi. Rather than pursue Silco, he swiftly grapples Vi and crashes through the wall with her, plummeting to the ground below. Vi holds Vander's head in her hands. He tells her to take care of Powder before his eyes lull back, presumably dead. Vi shrieks in agony at the loss of her adoptive father. Moments later, Powder appears, excitedly proclaiming that her monkey bomb finally worked. However, she sees Vander's body in Cliger's blood-stained goggles on the ground, and slowly realizes what happened. She begins crying, pleading that she only wanted to help. Vi is furious, reminding Powder that she told her to stay away. She hits Powder, and after Powder asks and screams why she left her, she tells her she's a Jinx and that Milo was right. Powder merely unravels into tears and fragmented begging. Realizing that she's gone too far, Vi walks away to burn off her anger, Powder calling her name all the while, and collapses against a wall in exhaustion. Believing Vi abandoned her, Powder goes into another mental breakdown, sobbing. Silco turns a corner and finds Powder. When Vi sees Silco standing over her sister, she attempts to rush back to her side, but Marcus catches her from behind. He holds a drugged cloth over her nose and mouth, lulling her unconscious and dragging her away as he assures her that Silco will kill her if he sees her. Silco's remaining henchmen meet up with him, and one of them is carrying an unconscious Sevika. Silco asks Powder where her sister is while hiding a knife behind his back. Powder responds by leaping into Silco's arms so forcefully that it knocks him to the ground and makes him drop the knife. Still crying, she says that Vi left her and that she's not her sister anymore. After a moment of hesitation and realizing her situation is similar to the one he had once when Vander betrayed him, Silco wraps his arms around Powder and comforts her, saying, "It's okay. We'll show them. We will show them all." Several years after the events of the previous episode, Jace enters Heimerdinger's office. They speak of the upcoming Progress Day, a holiday marking the anniversary of Piltover's founding. The city is about to turn 200 years old. Jace inquires about a statue of a man named Stanwyck Pittedley, to which Heimerdinger explains that Stanwyck is remembered not for his own work, but for the contributions of his students. Heimerdinger informs Jace that while typically he is the one to give the Progress Day speech, he and the council want Jace to deliver it this year, opining on how Jace's hex gates, devices that allow airships to travel at speeds previously thought impossible, have revolutionized the city. He wonders if Jace has anything he could reveal at the ceremony, and Jace invites Heimerdinger to his lab later that afternoon to see what he calls the next chapter of Hextech. At the Progress Day festival, Mrs. Karaman introduces Jace, her famous protege, to a group of attendees. He excuses himself to banter with Caitlin, now an enforcer, who is guarding her family's tent, which she hated it because it was her mother's idea. On a nearby airship dock, Silco's henchmen, led by Sevika, prepare a large shipment of shimmer. They are attacked from above by Firelights, a gang of masked vigilantes known for their flying hoverboards. The Firelights subdue the henchmen using grenades that imprison their target within a shell of amber-colored crystals. The Firelight leader starts a stopwatch, saying that the crystals will only hold for 5 minutes. Poring over the vast quantities of shimmer, the leader remarks that Silco's operations are expanding. He orders the Firelights to check for more shimmer below deck, and to burn it all. 2 Firelights descend below deck and trigger a tripwire that locks the door shut behind them. Seeing a crude drawing of a monkey on the door, they realize that this is the work of a teenage powder, now known as Jinx. Another device activates, dangling a doll in front of the Firelights, which attaches several grenades to each of their bodies. They explode, killing the pair. Jinx emerges onto the top deck and begins dispatching the remaining Firelights. One of them moves to set the shimmer ablaze with a flare, but Jinx grabs her arm and pistol whips her, dislodging her mask. Revealed to be a human girl with pink hair, the Firelight bears a resemblance to Vi, causing Jinx to become frozen stiff by a sudden surge of traumatic memories. In Jinx's stupor, the Firelight drops the flare, igniting the shimmer, and breaks free of Jinx's grasp. Jinx responds by firing her shock pistol, killing the girl. The Firelight leader cries out and rushes to shake the girl awake, but she doesn't move. He checks his stopwatch, realizing that his 5 minutes are almost up. Enraged, he makes a wild attack against Jinx, but is quickly grabbed and carried away by another Firelight on a hoverboard. Jinx erratically fires her minigun, pow-pow, at the fleeing Firelights, pincushioning the ship's hull with bullet holes and wounding one of her allies, but the Firelights escape unscathed. Sevika finally breaks free from the crystals and angrily confronts Jinx for failing to guard the cargo. Heimerdinger arrives at Jace's lab, where Jace and Victor display several new inventions. First is a newly fortified hex crystal. Unlike normal crystals, which are extremely volatile and dangerous, these smooth, marble-like crystals can withstand great force and are completely safe. This allows them to design portable devices, such as the Atlas gauntlets, a pair of robotic hands created to assist miners, granting the wielder strength enough to crush boulders. In addition, Victor demonstrates the Hex Claw, a mechanical arm equipped with a powerful laser designed to assist artificers. Heimerdinger is impressed, but estimates that these devices will need a decade of additional research before they can be released to the public, since putting that type of power in everyone's hands would be dangerous without safeguards. Victor is disheartened, eager to start improving lives immediately. Caitlin sneaks aboard the nearly destroyed airship where the Firelights attacked, now an active crime scene. She takes photographs and examines the wreckage carefully. Following a trail of blood below deck, she discovers the henchman Jinx mistakenly shot, collapsed on the ground. She uses a cloth to stem his still open wound as she begins questioning him. Marcus arrives, now the sheriff, and reprimands Caitlin for interfering in this investigation while she's supposed to be guarding her family's tent. He punishes her with a graveyard shift and orders his officers to take the wounded henchman to Stillwater Prison. Sevika returns to the last drop, transformed by Silco into a raucous nightclub. In Silco's office, she blames Jinx for the lost shimmer, but Silco defends Jinx, saying it was Sevika who failed in her responsibility. Sevika storms out in frustration. Silco asks Jinx, who had been listening from the rafters, for her side of the story. Jinx explains her trauma response to the pink-haired girl, and Silco stresses that she needs to move on from the past. He says that Sevika will clean up today's mess and instructs Jinx to take some time off and focus on her gadgetry. Just as Sevika did, Jinx storms off in a huff. At a loudish cocktail party, Mel is standing alone on a tall balcony. Alora approaches, asking if she's tired of mingling. Mel bemoans that the only person worth her time is Jace. As if on cue, Jace arrives, asking to speak to Mel in private. After retreating to Mel's study, he explains that Heimerdinger thinks Jace's inventions need more time and asks for her advice. Mel urges him to give people a glimpse of the future, saying that investors and representatives from all over the world will be present at Jace's speech, and that Progress Day is the perfect time to reveal new creations. Jinx returns to her lair, fashioned from the remnants of a massive engine hanging over a cavernous fissure. She vents her frustrations to crude effigies of Milo and Clagger, complaining that Silco now thinks she's weak. However, her mood gradually improves as she starts to come up with a plan to prove herself. Jace prepares to deliver his Progress Day speech. He invites Victor on stage with him, but Victor declines due to the large crowd. After Mrs. Kareman introduces him, he walks on stage to rambunctious applause. He compares his humble origins as a stonemason scion to his current status as the creator of the Hex Gates, which have brought incredible prosperity to Piltover. Victor prepares to unveil their latest inventions, but Jace doubts himself and says that he'll be ready to reveal them at a later date, to which the crowd seems disappointed. However, he finishes by claiming that his creations will bring an end to the people's hardships and that Piltover's future is bright. The crowd applauds once again, but Jace sees that Mel and Alora have gotten up to leave. Afterwards, Caitlin and a group of enforcers relax on the steps of the Capitol building as they guard the now empty festival set up late at night. The others are teasing her for her background of wealth and refinement when a fire breaks out in a nearby building. They rush to the scene and hear the voice of a young girl crying for help from within. Some enforcers leave to notify the fire brigade, others start deploying extinguishers, and yet others begin searching for the child. However, they find that the child's voice is coming from a portable speaker hanging from the ceiling alongside numerous explosives. The artificial voice sours, becoming Jinx's voice, and Caitlin sees a drawing of a monkey, nearly identical to the one she saw on the destroyed airship. She realizes that it's a trap, but it's too late, and the bombs detonate, collapsing the building. 6 enforcers die in the blast, while others, including Caitlin, are injured. Caitlin sees Jinx leaving the scene before she loses consciousness. The following morning, Jace and Victor inform Marcus and the council that the perpetrator of this crime also stole one of the fortified hex crystals and some of their research papers. When asked if the Undercity could create a weapon with the stolen crystal, Jace admits that it's possible. He recommends suspending all Hextech operations, including the Hex Gates, until the situation is resolved, but the council is reluctant to halt foreign commerce. Mel proposes that Jace be given a seat on the council so that he'll have the resources to assist in this investigation as he chooses. Heimerdinger seconds the motion, prompting Mel to call a vote. Back in her lair, Jinx is hard at work on new gadgets. Silco arrives, furiously reprimanding her for destroying a building and killing enforcers. However, she gives him the fortified hex crystal she stole, setting off a fireworks display and hugging Silco to earn his approval. Finally, he seems pleased. In her bedroom, Caitlin is attempting to make sense of recent events via a sprawling, interconnected display of evidence and photographs pinned to a map of Piltover and Zaun. Jace arrives with flowers, but Caitlin is uninterested, tossing them in with the many other flowers she's received during her recovery. She explains her findings. She believes that the perpetrators of the failed smuggling operation were also responsible for the recent attack. Nearly all of the Undercity's ongoing violence, she reasons, can be traced back to a single source. Jace is unsure if any of her theories can be proven. He reveals that he's been made a counselor and asks her to join his security team, since her parents have now had her discharged from the enforcers. She rejects his charity and tells him to leave. Caitlin takes a ferry to Stillwater Prison and asks to speak with the henchman she found aboard the airship, inmate 2135. The warden reveals that the inmate was assaulted and is unable to speak due to his injuries. Instead, Caitlin goes to talk with the prisoner who attacked him. Alone in a cell on the 40th basement level, she finds this prisoner, Vi.